Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Right now, we are unpacking an escalating maritime standoff that literally has the entire globe holding its breath. We're looking at a high-stakes clash between the United States and Iran, and it's all centering around one of the absolute most vital arteries for global trade, the Strait of Hormuz. In this explainer, we're going to break down exactly what is happening, why the diplomacy is totally stalled out, and how this localized conflict is already sending massive economic shockwaves across the entire world. I am so thrilled to guide you through this really fascinating and frankly critical topic today, and we'll try to make some total sense of the chaos as we go.
Okay, let's dive into this. On our agenda today, the Strait of Hormuz blockade threat, the deadlock of negotiations in Pakistan, the global economic domino effect, the position of China, Russia, and NATO, and finally, Prabowo's steps to secure energy.
Starting with Section 1, the Strait of Hormuz blockade threat, a dual maritime standoff.
So, we're literally looking at two entirely different realities playing out on the water. The U.S. stance is completely uncompromising. President Donald Trump has announced a total blockade of all maritime traffic heading to or coming from Iranian ports. And there's a very firm deadline on this, April 13, 2026 at 10 a.m. To back this up, Trump is claiming that the U.S. actually has more oil reserves than Russia and Saudi Arabia combined, basically saying, hey, we don't need to rely on this region. But on the flip side, Iran projects a completely different picture. State television just released drone footage showing what they claim is full surveillance of all activity in the Strait of Hormuz. They even broadcasted a clip of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps actively warning a U.S. destroyer and pushing it away from the strait. So you have two vastly different assertions of power over the exact same stretch of water.
Moving on to Section 2, the deadlock of negotiations in Pakistan, or when diplomacy stalled in Islamabad.
Let's look at the timeline because this escalated fast. These two nations recently sat down for a grueling 21-hour negotiation session in Islamabad, Pakistan, right in the middle of a temporary ceasefire. The whole goal was to find a diplomatic off-ramp, But at the end of those talks, they concluded with zero agreements on the key issues. The breakdown was absolute. And in the immediate aftermath, instead of extending the ceasefire, the U.S. just announced its full maritime blockade. Iran instantly fired back, pledging to retaliate against U.S. and Israeli interests in the region. So the failure at the negotiating table literally became an escalation on the water overnight.
To really grasp the U.S. strategy here, we just need to look at their stated goals. In a recent interview with Fox News, Donald Trump laid out this economic pressure campaign perfectly clearly. He stated, "We're putting on a complete blockade. We're not going to let Iran make money on selling oil. It's going to be all or nothing." So the objective for the U.S. is pretty straightforward. Utilize maximum economic pressure to completely choke off Iran's oil revenue.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the direct counter-narrative coming from Iran. Ibrahim Azizi, who's the head of the National Security Commission of the Iranian parliament, completely dismissed the U.S. blockade threat. He actually characterized Trump's rhetoric as the outburst of a, quote, defeated president, claiming it's just an attempt to cover up the failures of what Iran calls an illegal war. So Iran's official stance right now is just total defiance. They are framing this blockade not as a massive show of American strength, but as a desperate measure.
All right, part 3, the global economic domino effect. The rising cost of conflict.
Listen, the stakes here are absolutely massive. Because of all this instability, oil prices have already crossed that $100 per barrel mark. But maritime intelligence experts are sounding the alarm. They're warning that if this conflict continues to escalate and both the Strait of Hormuz and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait get closed to international shipping, we could see oil prices absolutely skyrocket to $150 a barrel. To put that into perspective, that is a massive economic shock that would hit the wallet of every single consumer on the planet.
Let's actually break down step by step how that logical ripple effect happens in the real world. Step 1. Maritime traffic gets halted, warned off, or intercepted by either U.S. or Iranian forces. Step 2. Because those waters are basically an active war zone now, shipping insurance companies either flat out refuse to cover the cargo vessels or they spike their premiums astronomically. Step 3. Those massive, sudden transportation costs, they are passed directly onto us, the consumers. And keep in mind, it's not just fuel at the gas pump that goes up, it's the cost of any hydrocarbon derivative. We are talking about everything from the daily plastics you use in your kitchen to major manufacturing materials. Everything becomes significantly more expensive, almost overnight.
To give you a clear picture of just how desperate the logistics situation has become in the Middle East right now,
Iraq just officially reopened the El Walid border crossing to Syria. Now, why is that a big deal? That land border had been closed for over 11 years. They opened it specifically because they desperately need to export crude oil via convoys of land trucks, just to bypass the paralyzed maritime routes. Honestly, when countries are forced to resort to decade-old super inefficient land routes just to move oil, you know for sure that this maritime choke point is severely impacting the region.
This brings us to Section 4, the position of China, Russia, and NATO. Let's look at the geopolitical chessboard. Okay, let's map out exactly where the major geopolitical players stand on this. First, you have NATO and European nations like the UK, Spain, and Germany. They are explicitly refusing to join the US blockade. Their rationale is pretty simple. They admit they just lack the naval capacity for a prolonged, distant war. Plus, strategically, they really just want a return to normal global trade, not some escalating conflict. Then you have Israel, who is heavily supporting the US blockade. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been very public about this, stating that Iran's uranium enrichment program is the main hurdle and it simply has to be stopped. And finally, we've got China and Russia. They are kind of waiting in the wings, positioning themselves as potential mediators. After those talks failed in Islamabad, Iranian advisors hinted that Pakistan might just be too small to guarantee a massive international treaty. They actually prefer BRICS heavyweights like China and Russia to step in and underwrite any future agreements.
Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 5, Prabowo steps to secure energy and Indonesia's pragmatic response.
Because really, the crucial question on the minds of millions right now is, apa dampaknya bagi Indonesia? Or, what is the impact for Indonesia? How does a nation that is completely outside the Middle East survive a sudden, catastrophic disruption to the world's energy supply?
Well, the answer lies in some immediate, very high-level diplomacy. As soon as this crisis started escalating, Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto literally flew straight to Moscow to have a face-to-face with Vladimir Putin. The goal was crystal clear. You see, Indonesia requires roughly 1 million barrels of oil per day, and maintaining a secure supply line is absolutely vital for their domestic stability. Prabowo's strategy here is to pragmatically balance global relations. So even though Indonesia recently aligned with the US-backed BIOP initiative, he still flew right over to Russia to secure energy guarantees and consult on these incredibly fast-changing geopolitics. When it comes down to it, it's a survival strategy.
What Indonesia is practicing right here is literally textbook pragmatic diplomacy. It's the practice of securing your critical national interests, like, keeping the lights on and keeping gas in the pumps, by maintaining balanced functional relationships with all major global powers, completely regardless of the ongoing conflicts between those powers. Indonesia is essentially talking to Washington, Beijing, and Moscow all at the exact same time, just to ensure its own survival amid this blockade.
And honestly, that leaves us with one final, massive question. Will this maritime choke point permanently redefine the world's energy map? As the US and Iran really dig their heels into the Strait of Hormuz, the ripple effects are forcing nations everywhere to entirely rethink their alliances, their trade routes, and their fundamental reliance on Middle Eastern oil. This geopolitical chessboard is moving so fast right now, and the economic stakes literally couldn't be higher. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep learning, stay curious, and I'll see you next time.